Hi, I'm Tracy Pierce, Kennewick School District Superintendent. Thank you for your interest in learning more about school district bond and levy measures. Bonds and levies are the important local funding measures that help to provide a quality education for our students by funding important programs, staffing, and buildings. In this video, I'll explain the difference between bonds and levies and share information about how schools are funded in our state. I'll also provide information on the two replacement levies that are on the ballot for our district on February 8th. As you may know, every few years the district is out talking to the community and staff about upcoming ballot measures. Those ballot measures are either bonds or levies. And a good way to remember the difference between the two is bonds fund buildings and levies fund learning. Levy funding is very important to our district because it helps bridge the gap between the funding that we receive from the state and the funding that we actually need as a school district. This February, we will have two replacement levies on the ballot, and I'll be talking about the important programs and staffing that those levies fund in this presentation. Before I get into the details of the upcoming levy measures, I want to talk just a bit about the bond that was passed in 2019. We're very fortunate as a school district and appreciative of the community support that we've received for our past bond and levy measures. The bond that passed in 2019 funded a number of important building projects. We were able to complete Phase 2 of Amistad Elementary, add additions at both Kennewick and Southridge High School and complete field upgrades there, complete the new building for Kennewick High School, and the next project in the queue is our new Ridgeview Elementary. There's also funding in that bond measure for a new future elementary school when it's needed. We're very appreciative of the support that we've received from the community for our bond that we passed in 2019. In this presentation, I'll be focusing on the next ballot measures, which are the upcoming replacement levies that will be on the ballot February 8th. So what you'll hear is what's on the ballot, why we need the levies, how the levies are used to help us accomplish our strategic goals as a district, what the levies cost, where you can find more information, and when you vote. So this time we have two replacement levies that will be on the ballot February 8th. Proposition 1 is our Replacement Educational Programs and Operations, or EP&O levy, and Proposition 2 is our Replacement Technology levy. And both of these levies are replacing levies that are currently in place and expiring. Levy funding is very important for our school district, just like all school districts across the state. We receive funding from the state, and we're expected to seek support for our schools through local funding measures to help bridge the gap between the funding that we receive from the state and the funding that we actually need. And we're no different from any other district in the state in that we go out on a somewhat regular basis to seek support from our local community. What is unique to Kennewick is that if we can pass our local levies, we'll receive additional state funding called Local Effort Assistance. That Local Effort Assistance, or LEA funding, is levy equalization funding. We receive that funding because the state recognizes that when you look at the whole assessed valuation of our school district, all of the commercial property and residential property within our district boundary, in Kennewick, currently that's about $10 billion, and that sounds like a lot of money. However, when you compare that assessed valuation to, say, a Bellevue School District on the other side of the state, which has much more commercial property, higher population density, and higher residential property values, a district like Bellevue can seek a funding amount from their local community and keep the tax rate relatively low. If we were to try to seek that same amount from our local community, the tax rate would be way too high. And the state recognizes that and says to districts like ours, if you can secure funding from your local community and pass your levies, we'll give you additional state funding to help equalize things. This local effort assistance, or levy equalization, ensures that students all over the state, regardless of where they live, receive an equal opportunity for education, and it helps provide relief for our local taxpayers. For our district, what that means in terms of actual dollars is shown on this screen. So for the 21-22 school year, about $17.2 million of our budget is coming from local EP&O levy, and about $14.5 million is coming from that additional state funding that we receive when we pass our local levies. Total, it's about $32 million each year. And again, we only receive that additional state funding if we can pass our local levy measures. So before I get into some specific examples of what kinds of programs and staffing are funded through our levies, I want to talk just for a moment about our district's strategic plan. In the 2020 school year, we began a community input process seeking feedback from our community, staff, and students. And all of that feedback helped us to develop a new strategic plan for our district. We now have a district, a community, a staff, and a family-focused goal, and 3 student-focused goals. As a district, we want to be able to ensure that we're innovative and proactive, and that we're accountable to our community and good stewards of our community resources. We have great partnerships in our school district, and our community-focused goal focuses on ensuring that those partnerships are maintained and strengthened. We want all of our community to see themselves as important collaborators in public education. Our goal for families is that all families are key partners. We want to collaborate with families and ensure that we are working closely with them and providing opportunities for input and feedback. We have a staff-focused goal, and you might not know this, but Kennewick School District is the largest employer in the city of Kennewick. We have over 3,000 staff members in all different positions, and as an employer, we want to remain competitive and ensure that we can continue to recruit, hire, and retain highly effective staff. We want all of our staff members to be safe, valued professionals. Those 4 goals are all really in service of our goals for our students. We have 3 student-focused goals: that all students are safe, known, and valued, all students are engaged learners, and all students are ready for their future. So as I talk through the important areas that the levies fund, you'll hear a strong connection between those areas and the goals that we're trying to accomplish as a school district. In the next few minutes, I'll highlight some of the important things that are funded through the levy connected to health and safety, student learning and staffing, instructional support, operations and maintenance, and athletics and activities. So health and safety remains a top priority for our school district, and we rely on levy funding to fund important programs and people connected to health and safety. For example, our partnership with the City of Kennewick and Kennewick Police Department is funded through the levy, and through that partnership we're able to provide school resource officers at our middle and high schools. We also rely on levy funding for security staffing at our high schools. Levy funding also funds important people like nurses and counselors K-12. So nurses, that's a good example. We receive funding from the state for 4 nurses for the entire school district. We bridge the gap between the nurse staffing that we receive from the state and the nurse staffing that we actually have with levy funds. Student learning and staffing is another category that relies heavily on levy funding. People like our graduation success coordinators in our high schools that help our students stay engaged and graduate with a plan for post-high school. Also, programs like AP and IB are levy funded. We also rely on levy funding for parts of people and programs like our library program, professional development and training, substitute teachers, and special education support. Levy funds are used to help provide instructional support throughout the district. So important people like our secretaries and paraeducators and curriculum specialists who help support our schools, parts of those people are levy funded, as well as curriculum materials. Operations and maintenance is another area that relies on levy funding. We've got important people like our custodians and grounds and maintenance crews who help keep our buildings clean and well maintained. We rely on levy funding to help support them. We also rely on levy funding for vehicles and equipment and supplies and maintenance. Athletics and activities is an area that's completely levy funded. This is an area that the state doesn't recognize as being part of the program of basic education. So school districts throughout the state use levy funding to support athletics and activity programs. And without levy funding, we just wouldn't be able to have these programs for our students. Here you can see how the levy and LEA funds combined are used. So of that total $32 million that comes from the EP&O levy, and that additional state funding that we receive if we can pass our levy, you can see that about half of that goes for teachers and support staff, about 17% for special education, nearly 9% for athletics and activities, and you can see the percentages for the other areas as well. Another way to look at that same data is shown here in terms of total dollars. For example, we spend about $15.5 million of that total $32 million on teachers and support staff. And special education is an area that I've mentioned a couple of times. And special education is an area that has historically been and continues to be very underfunded. So as you can see here, we spend about $5.5 million each year from the Levy and LEA funding to help provide special education programming and support staff that we need for our students. So all of those areas that I talked about, that's not everything that the EP&O levy pays for, but those are some important highlights. And now I'll highlight some of the important things that are funded by the technology levy. So all of our student and staff computers, instructional software, and tech support and tech training is funded through the technology levy. So we are a big operation as a school district. Not only do we have over 3,000 staff, we've got 18,500 students and 32 schools. So as you can imagine, it's a big operation in terms of technology needs and support. Right now with our one-to-one student computer program, we have nearly 20,000 Chromebooks out in our schools and about 4,800 iPads. So this requires quite a bit of resource to not only purchase these devices, but also to keep them well maintained and functioning and on a replacement cycle when they need replacing. In addition to funding student and staff computers, the technology levy funds instructional software that teachers use in their classrooms with students. It also pays for software support and hardware support and training. About 66% of the technology levy funds go toward student and staff computers, about 23% toward instructional technology software, about 9% for technology support staff, and about 2% for technology training. Now that we've gone through what the levies pay for, I'll talk about what the levies cost. And there are a couple important things to remember. One, these are not new taxes. These levies currently exist and are expiring in 2022. The levies that will be on the ballot on February 8th will be replacing those levies that are expiring. The other important thing to remember is that we seek an amount from the community and voters approve that amount that the district can collect every year. We then estimate a tax rate per thousand of assessed value based on the total assessed valuation of the district and the projected assessed valuation growth. If the assessed valuation of the district grows more than we projected, the tax rate will actually be lower than we projected. So specifically, what you see here is the Educational Programs and Operations Levy and the Technology Levy. And the first two rows show the levies that are currently in place and expiring. So you'll see those levy amounts that were approved by the voters the last time we sought levy funding, and the current and estimated tax rate for the levies that are expiring. In the bottom four rows, you'll see the replacement levies that would be coming on board in 2023. You see the levy amounts for the EP&O and technology levy and those estimated tax rates. You will notice that the levy amounts are increasing each year, and that's because our costs are increasing. Just like everyone, we're experiencing inflation, increased utility costs, increased staffing costs. So we need to make sure that our plan moving forward enables us to continue to provide the quality programming and staffing that we have in place today. What this looks like for an individual homeowner is what you'll see here. So there's some property value examples on the first column, and then current levy rates and amounts that are being paid on an annual basis in the second column, and then what those rates and amounts would look like moving forward with the replacement levies and the difference between the two. So we'll take the property value example of $350,000. The home is assessed at that value of $350,000. Today, that homeowner is paying an annual levy amount of $707. That's a tax rate of $2.02 per thousand of assessed value. Moving forward with the replacement levies, the estimated rate on average over the 4 years will be $2.36 per thousand of assessed value. That means that same homeowner would now be paying $826 annually for both levies. That's a difference of $119 per year. So we want to be very transparent with our community about what the needs are, where the money goes, and what the levies cost. The other thing we pay close attention to as a school district is the total school levy rates. So there is a state school levy rate that every homeowner and taxpayer in our state pays. And then, of course, we have our local EP&O levies and bond, which we're paying off over time. What you see here is what those rates have been historically, what they are currently, and what they're projected to be moving forward into the future. So for example, you can see in 2018, the total combined rate was $8.16 per thousand of assessed value. And that rate's actually decreased over time. And our goal is to keep that rate very steady and predictable moving forward into the future for our community. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about school district levies and bonds. I hope this video has been helpful in providing information about school funding in our state and in our district. Be sure to check out other videos in our Get to Know Kennewick Schools series as they're shared throughout the year on our website and YouTube channel. If you'd like more information about the upcoming EP&O and technology levies on the ballot for our district, please visit our district website. And don't forget to vote by February 8th.